right now here on Daybreak. We are discussing business here on Bulls and Bears, and specifically the effects on coronavirus on the economy. Now, Tony, are we going, or are we likely to see a global recession, something similar to what had happened in 2008?
Yeah, a global recession is coming, that's definite.
This year? Because that debate has been there since last year, that rumor.
No. I think the global recession comes from the fact about coronavirus and how markets are responding to it. Despite that, there is an oil price war. And so we find that quite a number of markets, we see that the impact to the global market. I think a lot of wealth has been wiped out. Yeah. So definitely there is a recession that is coming. And I think as an economy that is plugged in, integrated into the global economy is one thing that we need to plan. That also, one of the main things, I think Steve mentioned something about sovereignty. I think global markets, generally, a lot of countries depend on China. China is called the workshop of the world for a reason. It's not only in Kenya that we depend on it. I think if you talk about sovereignty, I think the sovereignty that will be a bigger question is the US sovereignty. Because you look at iPhones alone, iPhones are largely parts of it are made in China. So the response to this thing, there is a different aspect to it. Talk about manufacturing and supply chains. I think quite a number of them are collapsing because of the lack of movement. Countries are in a lockdown. So the impact of the coronavirus, then coupled up with the oil price war that is not ending any time, we are leading into a recession. So that's definitely that the recession.
I don't want us to get into the oil price conversation. I'm really trying to halt myself from that because of time. Trying to clear myself. But here's the thing, Roselyn.
Yes. Talk
to me about solutions. Solutions, because even look at generally the world calendar. The Paris Half Marathon has had to be moved all the way to October. Coachella, the biggest music festival in the world, has had to move. You were talking to me about football.
About football, more importantly.
Football.
And
the Olympics.
And the Olympics.
Yes.
So talk to me about solutions, especially in the workplace. Like Steve has said, at the end of the day, you do have a right. It's your human right to eat, etc. But this is infringing on that.
Yeah, so the fact is that it's a pandemic, and we shouldn't just be happy that it's not happening here, that we haven't had a case reported. The thing is that we should consider using digital and decentralized platforms, not just for finance, but even for work. You think about video conferencing. There are conferences that had to be cancelled, but owing to travel restrictions, some organizers have requested presenters to just record themselves on video and submit that, so that they ultimately get to share their ideas. But then again, you're looking at the safety of this person at the end of the day. So even offices and organizations should really consider what is the best way to cushion their human resources at the end of the day. Should they re-strategize? Should they give people options to work from home and not require them to come to the office every day? Maybe just give limited days or hours, so that you're looking at this person being as safe as possible in the course of them being able to conduct their duties at work. Then you're also looking at employees being empowered at every level whatsoever. That do they have the right information? Do they know how to self-quarantine? Because not everybody knows what self-quarantine means. Someone will say that I'm working from home, but I'll step out to buy milk and my supplies instead of requesting someone to bring that. So people need to be educated as accurately as possible, not just at the office, but even at home, just as we called and asked for some measures just a few minutes ago. And the other thing is also going slow on huge gatherings, because you don't want people to be exposed to especially risky areas and, just such measures.
Here's the thing. Do you think we've banned, we've only banned flights from northern Italy and parts of China, but the government hasn't talked about the connecting hubs. Ethiopia and Dubai are connecting hubs.
Yes, no, those are really huge. And the other thing is, just as I mentioned, apart from educating people, you also have to make sure that you have measures for substitution. That's the other very important thing, because the travel advisories are specifically stating, unless this travel is essential or critical to the purpose of the organization or its agenda, then those are the cases in which it's being restricted. So it comes back to, are we giving the correct and accurate information to people at the end of the day? Because if this person knowingly travels to a connecting hub that's in a safe area, that's fine, but if it's a risky area, then this person needs to be monitored closely, so that you don't have cases whereby someone travels to an area, it's not known, then they come back infected. That's the thing. So there has to be increasingly accurate monitoring of especially people who are traveling to affected areas.
Okay. George, finally, last comments from you. How are businesses going to rebound from this? We've already seen that they've already taken a hit. We've seen small traders saying that from next month they might not have stocks, and now they're just individuals are buying and prices are set at will. So what are we going to see going forward?
That's a very interesting question. I think the first step is that you need an intervention of government, and I think the government has to come in and find ways of providing some form of stimulus to the businesses in terms of protection, especially in Kenya, to be specific. When you look at the tour and travel business sector, I think it's going to be hit significantly because of people not being able to move, tourists not being able to move from Italy, from the United States, from the United Kingdom to Mombasa.
How long will it take for our economy to recover?
Well, I think for now, Kenya doesn't look like it has been hit so far, right? But I think there's a risk, and what Tony said, there's a risk for me, because Kenya is highly connected to the global economy, there's a risk that if there's a global recession, right, European demand in the US for our products, especially for flowers, is going to come down, and that's a big worry for me. Tourists will not come in. Tourism is such a big and core important for the economy that if it's affected, and you saw what happened in 2016 when it was affected with the global travel advisories,
yes,
and that's, for me, that's a big concern. Another concern for me also is if products are not able to move from China to the port of Mombasa, what are supermarkets going to do? Are they going to hike prices? That's a big concern for me.
All right, Tony, your closing remarks, 30 seconds, please.
Okay, let me, I think I'll answer your last question you asked, George. Will there be, I think, how long will it take to recover? I think that depends on how the world contains the problem. So it remains uncertain. Unless we have, I think countries are providing almost 30 days in terms of containment. If there's a good response that we feel that countries are able to take control, like Italy and where they've hit, they've had the adverse effects, then we can say we are heading somewhere to solving the problem. But the fact that countries are not able to contain and there are lockdowns, and travel restrictions and all that, we cannot predict when exactly will happen. So I think it's a long process. I think it's a very tough time for those in business today. So looking forward, I think we'll have to wait and see how it plays out.
All right, ROSELYN, your closing comments?
All right, it's a dire situation, and many people are, of course, fearful and anxious, but we need to be hopeful and look at as many alternatives as possible in terms of how can we do business differently, how can we share value differently, and how can we treat people around us as humanely as possible. Again, also not kind of trying to protect ourselves from the social economic impact of the pandemic. So we need to be as humane and hopeful as possible in the midst of the crisis.
All right, Steve?
I think for me the lesson that I've picked from me is that we needed to make all voices count, not just the responses from government. Then the voices that have been muted in this conversation, which is terribly sad if you ask me, is that the people who have lost employment, the shops that have closed, I think it's the media trying to map them out and find them. The government missed an opportunity to bring them together, have a conversation. You know that there's some healing and renewal you get in the middle of a crisis if you have a conversation. Now, coronavirus, I think we are almost containing it globally, but we will never know the extent of preparedness in terms of a comprehensive response that not just deals with brick and mortar, that facility here and there, reacting to preparing mitigation measures. We need to know in the future, because crises like this will always occur. How do we feel the pain? How do we share the pain of someone who suddenly gets to work and they're told you can't come back to work anymore, you're fired? I'd like to request the Kenyan National Human Rights Commission to investigate this matter, the impact of the shutting down of business on human rights. When these people were, some of them were terminated, some of them were sent on unpaid leave, why are there conversations between the Minister of Labor and the government generally and these employees, or to just an abrupt move in the best interest of the nation, that you go to work and you find that you no longer have a place to go to, and then you've gone home, then you can't pay rent. And then the landlord, there's a terrible ripple effect because of the dependency pattern and ratio in this country.
Right.
They feel that work support a huge majority that depend on them. I think next time, let us also attend to the crisis while also making all voices count, so that we really feel as Kenyans, not just what the government is doing if you are sick.
Yes.
I think that's very important.
That's a good note to leave it at. That is Steve Ogolla. He's a lawyer plus an advocate of the High Court. We also had George BODO with us. He's a financial analyst, and ROSELYN WANJIRU, an economist, and Tony Watima as well, an economist. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for helping us make sense of today's conversation. Yeah. And of course, Faisal had the numbers today.
Thank you very much. Next week, same place, same time. Next we go to eat. Next we are going to eat.
You see, we've really roped him into this eating thing. That's right. Chef Ali is up next with Willis Rabu. I'll try and get him to eat today. See you in a bit.